value, a little bit of an intro to terpenes with cannabis, which is one of the things we're
There's
really
some very specific ones that are in cannabis.
Key terpenes, effects, flavors, the entourage effect, which is something I always like to talk about. Choosing terpenes for desired effects. So that's kind of almost getting back to the original question of how can I pick from a breeding standpoint, shopping for effect almost, all right? Flavonoids, the role of flavonoids in cannabis, interaction between flavonoids and terpenes, which is very important. It's kind of a yin and yang sort of thing. Research and potential benefits, getting more terpenes out of your plants. And finally,
we're Jug Dealers, we're the podcast you need in your feed. Teaching the game like you never seen. Jared, Gabe, Rambo, from OGs. Masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the data's green. We set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related. Brought to you by the good people at 5-8. And now we have JugDealers.shop and JugDealers.net for your shopping needs.
And JugDealers.net/samples with an S for anybody who wants to request samples, whether you're commercial or an end user, a hobby guy, whatever. We like to deal with everybody, top and bottom and everything in between. So if you guys got any questions.
And the samples been rolling in, man. People are digging it.
Samples have been rolling. Yep, absolutely. So we see you out there. We're happy to get them out to you. For any of the people that we are a little bit backed up on, just a heads up, it has been somewhat unprecedented, so understand that we are working through them. It is a first come, first serve basis, but please get those requests in, fill out that growers form, and we're happy to hook you up. So anyhow, without further ado, I think we've got a good one here for you guys. It's we're going to do an episode on terpenes. So I'd had a request.
Terps and flavonoids. I didn't put it in the title, but it is terps and flavonoids.
Yeah, terps and flavonoids. Flavonoids are the somewhat less talked about.
No one really talks about them,
But really, I think it's something that's at the very least worth mentioning, even if it doesn't have the hot buzzword that terpenes does. But yeah, I think this will be a good one. We did have somebody who was asking a little bit about breeding and how you can, select from different strains to get the effects you're looking at. And really that's almost such a loaded question. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's not so easy. It's just
goes back to our phenotype discussion because a plant may react differently in one building than it does in the other.
So we thought it was almost a better idea to possibly back it up even a step from there and say, well, let's talk about what are these things, what these terpenes, these flavonoids, these things that are having effects on us, these cannabinoids, all this different stuff, whether it's entourage effect, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, let's actually start with a couple of shout outs before we get in the episode.
So first off, this episode brought to you by Ruby, Fulvitech Winter, and Carbo, the terpene enhancers. And the shout outs today, the shout outs today are going to be Laszlo Woodbine from the UK. We see you. Johnny Keefe, 08 in Boston. Shout out to you. And finally, we got a combo here. I'm gonna throw Jayhawk a softball here. Yeah. But we got Biscuits Grow Show, and he actually snuck a question in there. His question was, does the winter frost kill the cover crop? Jayhawk?
No, it does not. I mean, the short answer is no. It breaks down very, very fast. So even for anybody that is using it in like a live soil or reuse substrate or anything like that, that is a common question that we get.
We get it a lot, actually.
We get it a lot. If you're really concerned about it and you have a way to either flush all the way through media if you're in a potted situation, or even if you're in a bed situation, you can always crank that Ruby up to 10 mils a gallon.
I'll run it as high as 15.
Even as high as 15,
when I have a little known fact for people, when you do have issues, if your EC is real high, if your pH is all jacked off, you can actually run jacked up,
Cut that one.
But yeah, at 15 mils a gallon, it'll actually help bond with some of those excess elements and kind of leach that out of the soil.
And so if you are worried about, but I will say it does break down very fast. The reality is the plant uptakes it, and those signals for that senescence to be initiated is all taken in. So it's not really something that has like a final effect on the soil or any kind of residual effect on the soil. So whether you guys are using, live soils, reusing substrates, any of that stuff, which to be fair, winter frost is fantastic. Because a lot of times when I've done, super soil type stuff, the hardest thing to do is to get that color out. The hardest thing to do is get that plant to really finish. Why? Because you can't just turn the microbes off. It's not like a tap.
Well, and that's just it. A lot of times when you have those living soils, stuff is continuing to go on, and winter frost really does send those signals. I tell people all the time, when I grew GMO and people wanted it down in 80 days, I was able to get it down in 70, but literally you would hit it with winter frost
Gotta
to
hammer
get
it.
plants to finish.
Yep. All right. Well, I know we
I'll
have
throw out there too right now. If you want to try any of these things, if you always want to try winter, it's 30% off in the store right now. We got Black Friday cruising 30%
about the Black Friday
Everything's 30% off, boys. That's crazy. What are we doing?
Yep. And that goes all the way to actual Black Friday. And then we do even have a post Black Friday, but we're going to keep that a surprise. So we do have
a free gift if you spend more than 50. You're going to want that gift. People ask about it. They don't even know what they're getting.
It's a mystery item.
It's a mystery item.
It's
a mystery to us too.
Well, yeah, we're going to figure it out. Whatever's there. I will say without further ado, we do have a very, there's a lot going on in this episode. You'll even see from the outline that we have here, there's a lot of different points that are touched on. So I don't want to waste too much time. I do want to get into this. I guess I'll walk us through the outline real quick. We're going to look at what are terpenes by definition, a little bit deeper dive into the different terpene types, which is of value, a little bit of an intro to terpenes with cannabis, which is one of the things we're
There's
really
some very specific ones that are in cannabis.
Key terpenes, effects, flavors, the entourage effect, which is something I always like to talk about, choosing terpenes for desired effects. So that's kind of almost getting back to the original question of how can I pick from a breeding standpoint, shopping for effect almost. All right. Boiling points of terpenes, which that's going to talk a little bit more about like even
where they volatilize,
extract making and things like that. I wanted to avoid the H word because we're still early in the show and I don't want to get age gated, but extracts, flavonoids, the role of flavonoids in cannabis, interaction between flavonoids and terpenes, which is very important. It's kind of a yin and yang sort of thing. Research and potential benefits, getting more terpenes out of your plants. And finally, final thoughts. So without any further ado, Gabe, why don't you tell us exactly what a terpene is?
Grandma, you mind sliding that up a little bit?
Little slide.
So cannabis terpene is a naturally occurring aromatic compound made up of hydrogen and carbon atoms found in cannabis plants. And just so we're all clear, hydrogen and carbon atoms means it is a hydrocarbon. So I say that to people all the time. People say they don't want to smoke butane. It's a hydrocarbon. Guess what? Terpenes are hydrocarbons. Responsible for their distinctive aroma and flavors. Terpenes are found in many plants, but in cannabis, they contribute not only to the plant's scent and taste, but also its effect on the mind and body. So that's, we'll get into that entourage effect, but they actually work together with the cannabinoids. Terpenes can be organic, like the ones found in plants, or synthesized. For example, myrcene, a common terpene in cannabis, is known for its earthy, musky aroma, and it's thought to promote relaxation. Limonene, and not for nothing, myrcene is also one of those ones that is heavy duty in mango. So you get a lot of people who are like, "Oh, if you eat some mango, it'll help kind of push that."
Well, and I do, and I'm glad you did make the point, and I don't mean to cut you off, but they're very, very prevalent in cannabis plants, and we know it mostly with cannabis plants.
But they're in tons of other things.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are fruits, all flowers, all kinds of stuff. Limonene, another terpene, has a citrus scent that may have uplifting effects. Obviously, with a name like limonene, it's pretty
Lemon,
easy. And you see a lot of those OGs, the SFV, some of these lemony flavors, lemon.
Sure, even
lemon
garlic
kush.
Cocktail, Tangy, anything like that.
They're all going to have these. Yeah. So realistically, you as a consumer can start getting in your mind, hey, this has a certain scent, will give a certain effect. Research also suggests that terpenes can interact with cannabinoids like THC and CBD, and quite frankly, a lot of the compounds that we're not studying because there's so many other cannabinoids.
Just scratching the surface.
To enhance and modify the effects of cannabis, a phenomenon called the entourage effect. This synergy might help explain why different strains of cannabis produced varying effects despite having similar THC and CBD levels. That's why, it's so frustrating for us, not only with the sativa, sativa and indica don't describe effects. They just describe morphology, in which Jayhawk and I even get into that about how we don't really feel like it's really applicable in today's time. I feel like I feel like those are antiquated.
I think they are, and I mean, if you get
nomenclature,
if you look at Robert Cannell Clark, he obviously makes a huge bid for thin leaf versus thick leaf drug variety versus industrial hemp varieties, and really using that distinction more specifically. And to me, it's more of a region of origin is what it speaks to, almost more than anything else.
And I think a big thing to take away too is, as much as we talk about terpenes and all the rest of this stuff, it is all still going to be contingent on your endocannabinoid system, which is a whole different episode.
Right. Well,
whole different episode.
We all look. Your chemistry is different than my chemistry is different than your guys' chemistry out there. So to be able to paint this with a wide paintbrush, that's what's so impossible to do. And that's why even I can't remember the user. I'll have to figure out and shout you out, but who kind of was the impetus of getting into this episode. But it's not as easy as just, point and click, if you will. It's much more complex than that. I mean, I tell people that the two most complex classes that I took in college was organic chemistry and plant breeding. Because plant breeding, it's not just a little Punnett square. There's a lot going on there.
Well, and
a lot of genes going on and off, a lot of different things going on.
When Grambo showed, we're about to get into the different terpene types, but when Grambo actually pulls up the chart where you see all the different terpenes, they're all just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
And with maybe a little bit different shade.
But there's a,
extra
this it goes this direction, or it goes this direction, or it has more carbons or more hydrogens. So that's where I can understand when you're talking about organic chemistry. I mean, you're sitting here and you got to draw 10 different things that are all the same 3 molecules.
Well, I mean, fortunately, there are conventions for these things, right? And I might as well just bring it up, and then we can talk, and we'll bring it up again. But looking at these things, it's like they're fairly basic, really.
Right.
And so let's just get into it, right? So yes, terpenes are, as Gabe told us, they are hydrocarbons. The one thing I like to mention about that, when you talk about extractions, hydrocarbons like hydrocarbons, they attract each other. Think about that. Okay.
That's why I like butane.
Meaning they are organic compounds. They are made up of hydrogen, oxygen, or hydrogen and carbon, just like we said. Their basic structure is formed from repeating units of isoprene, which is a 5-carbon molecule, which link together in various ways to form different types of terpenes. So it's very similar, but just different enough.
It's like a little Rubik's Cube.
Or even, I mean, the cis and trans, that's the flip, that's the mirror side of it, right? So that on the most basic level is one difference. Or it could have just a single extra carbon here, this, that, wherever. I mean, it's very...
Little finger out there.
Dude, anyway, organic chemistry. Praise to all you that actually made it really work. I made it through. Anyway,
you're like, that was not one of my honors classes.
No, it was not. Terpenes are classified based on their number of isoprene units they contain. I think that's very important to know. So it's just like sugar chains too, right? You got, glucose or sucrose or things like that. There are 2 or 3 sugar chains, and you have, things like molasses or something that's these super long sugar chains, right?
Let's break it down for them, dude.
Let's do it.
So first off, you have monoterpenes. They're going to be 2 isoprene units and 10 carbon atoms. The examples of that would be limonene, would be myrcene. Then you have sesquiterpenes.
I've always liked that.
I love that word.
Sesquiterpenes.
So that would be 3 isoprene units and 15 carbon atoms. One of the examples of that would be beta-carotene. And then you have the diterpenes. That's going to be a 4 isoprene unit with 20 carbon atoms. Examples of that would be phytol. These hydrocarbons are responsible for producing a plant's aroma and play a role in its interaction with the environment. So deterring pests. I remember at Emerald Cup in 2017, they had discussed putting a plant in a room that had spider mites. And there was one plant that all the other plants had stayed away from because, it had certain terpenes, certain flavonoids that kind of kept it away. They had actually talked about extracting that plant and spraying it on the other plants. But that's just one example of that.
There's actually been some stuff that's been done out there of even taking taking like hormones from insects when they're attacking plants and things like that to initiate some of this like systemic acquired resistance, some of this SAR stuff. So really interesting stuff that can be kind of manipulated, and done. And the one thing I will say also, that whole attraction pollinators, obviously that's very obvious, because that's what we always think. It's funny. It's like, what? Cannabis, that smell? How would that detract anything? But you got to also think, not only does it attract pollinators, but think about it. It attracted human intervention. Okay. So a la Botany of Desire, right? Who's controlling who? I would suggest that anybody goes out and reads that book, and it will give you a different view and perspective on plants and who's taking care of who and who's controlling who. And anybody that thinks that they're a grower, we don't grow anything. Plants grow themselves.
I'll never forget, as a kid, I worked in a property in Philadelphia. A lot of plants that came over from other countries were initially brought in through Philly. And this one house I worked on, they had a rose garden where they brought all the roses in from France. And there were about 30 different types of roses. And I'd always remember going through there. A lot of these roses were ones that people selected for perfume.
Sure, of course.
And they were always so pungent and so different. but it was really amazing how you'd see all these different roses, and they just have all these different characteristics. The ones that have a lot of thorns, the real hybrid ones. But something I always love,
hybrid teas.
Yep.
Somebody knows a little bit something about roses. Anyway, let's talk about the individual ones, and really now always keep in mind entourage effect, entourage. Right. So when we talk about myrcene, or we talk about limonene, or we talk about beta-carotene, nothing. I really don't believe in using any of these singularly, right? They're going to dominate, but it's going to be a ratio thing, right?
I think that's hard for people. Like, people never go into the store and ask for the terpene profile. They always ask for the They're always like, "Oh, I want the highest THC." And meanwhile, you should be going, I want the entire profile so I can ascertain.
Well, even, my brother came to me one time. He's like, dude, he's like, I'm looking at the testing, and he's in Missouri, and obviously, shout out to Missouri, home state, they've gone legal, and, and they do have terpene percentages on there. I said, dude, screw the THC. I said, just look at the terpene percentages. And, he's like, oh man, there was a massive difference.
Dude, a haze that's like, 17%, but high in the terps, that thing will send you to outer space.
All right, let's talk about myrcene. Let's talk about its flavor and aroma. It is, as we said, earthy, musky, a hint of clove or a hint of spice, allspice, something like that.
It's the Andrew Zimmern terp.
It's that earthy, herbal, like almost, earthy herbal. That's what I would say. It's known for its sedative properties. Myrcene can promote relaxation and help with stress relief. High myrcene levels are often associated with the more relaxing effects of cannabis. Other sources of it, which I appreciate you listening to that, mango, hops, and thyme. Hops also being part of the Cannabinaceae family. Do not forget that. So it is a very close cousin of our beloved cannabis as well. Next, limonene.
Let's talk some limonene. So, flavor and aroma, obviously citrus-like with a lemon or orange notes, zesty and uplifting. The effects, limonene is known to have some mood elevating, stress relieving effects. So it's nice for after work. It's often found in strains associated with uplifting, euphoric high. Obviously, you're going to find it in citrus fruits like lemons, limes, and oranges. That one is kind of a gimme.
That's a gimme. And I will say, though, limonene for, the strains that do kind of pick me up a little bit. Again, I'm going to call it thin leaf drug variety as opposed to calling it a sativa, but one of those that leans a little more in that direction. Typically for me in my chemistry is going to be something that's high in limonene.
100%.
The garlic cocktail that we've had in the group.
That was in my head.
That's like one that it's like you get up, you get creative, you get rolling. It's definitely, grab the guitar, grab the mando.
SFV is one of those for me. It's got a lot of that in there. So as far as the OGs go.
Sure. All right. Next, but not least of sort, linalool. Say that 14 times. Flavor and aroma, it's floral, and it's slightly spicy, similar to lavender, which, my God, that old strain lavender. Shout out to Soma. Loved that lavender. Loved that lavender. This terpene is known for its calming, anti-anxiety, and sedative effects, which, dude, that was that strain to a T.
That's that couch. That's that couch lock.
Into the couch.
Yeah.
It's very beneficial to people for looking to ease stress or with sleep issues. Other sources are, surprise, actually lavender, but also mint and rosewood.
So if you're looking for the couch lock, you're going to want that linalool. So next we're going to talk about pinene. Pinene is sharp and pine-like, reminiscent of fresh pine needles, known for promoting alertness. Pinene may help improve memory and counteract some of the short-term memory loss associated with THC. It also has anti-inflammatory effects. Pine trees, rosemary, and basil are those. So going back to the SFV, limonene and pinene would really be the kind of the prominent terpenes in there, and you could see how those would work together, where it has mood elevating and uplifting effects in those two terpenes. So, hey man, if you're having a bad day, go smoke some SFV.
But also, let's say that it's in a different situation where it's an extract and it's really, really high, almost artificially high in one of these. It could get a little bit weird. You know what I mean? I'm not into, me personally, and there has been a lot of people that there's enough, pure terpene extractions being done that people will go back and mad scientists putting it back in a little bit in different ratios.
I'm having thoughts right now. That I did not have writing this episode, but it's all kind of hitting me right now. I wonder, I don't see a lot of edible companies. They're all focused on the cannabinoid part. I don't see many of them focusing on the terpene part. But I might have to dig into that a little bit more, because
you're starting to see more companies that do the rosin gummies, like the alcohol extracted and the distillate extracted. They don't worry about that, but the rosins, they are reintroducing terpenes, and it actually modulates the high. It's a little bit different.
I could see that because
that's what I'm saying. And now the one place I would say, Gabe, that we might be seeing a little bit is in food. right? And people really looking at it and looking at food pairings and some of these cannabis dinners. Other than that, I tend to agree with you.
So even thinking about it even deeper, they sell indica. They sell indica and sativa. We're going to get this straight.
Eventually.
They sell indica and sativa gummies or edibles, but that's not a thing.
No,
like that's not a thing.
No,
in fact,
it's infuriating.
It's good marketing. Well, Gabe, I could have one gummy, or I could have a hybrid, a sativa, and an indica.
Now that I'll be honest with you, now that we're discussing this on the episode, it shouldn't be indica and sativa edibles. It should be edibles with a certain amount of the terps. Because that's what's going to modulate. That's what's going to modulate.
And again, about the only place I've seen that, and it's not even from a high standpoint, modulating the high standpoint. It's been more of a flavor standpoint, like I said, within some of these pairing dinners. But really, that's it. All right, let's not get stuck here. Caryophyllene.
It's easy to go down the rabbit hole.
It is. That's what we do, though. Caryophyllene. Okay, flavor and aroma: peppery, spicy, hint of cloves. It is unique among terpenes because it can also act as a cannabinoid by binding to CBD receptors. Very interesting in the body. So CBD receptors in the body can actually bind. That's wild. Known for its potential anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties. I was familiar with that. It's often found in strains for pain management. Other sources would be black pepper, cloves, and cinnamon. And I've also known that black pepper is definitely one of those things throughout history that is, used from a medicinal standpoint.
Look, man, this stuff is on the planet for a reason,
It's here for a reason.
Let's talk humulene. So humulene is earthy, woody, with a hint of hops. Known for appetite-suppressing properties, humulene may support weight loss efforts. It also has anti-inflammatory and antibacterial properties. You're going to find that in hops, basil, and sage. I would actually be interested to see that combined with THCV, which is also kind of an appetite suppressing cannabinoid. You could really be onto something with that.
Well, and here's what I'll also say, and I always like to make mention of this, just how little actual research we have done on any of this. So by the way, any of you fledgling researchers out there, these are things that really, truly, hopefully in the future, we will have much more an opportunity to study.
This honestly, it was one of my biggest things when I was in corporate cannabis, when I worked in Pennsylvania, we were kind of starting to work with University or Penn State.
Sure.
And that was what I was really excited about, was to get to really discuss in depth this information with people with PhDs and stuff,
right? And
send them down the rabbit hole.
And even getting it into some of these aromatic scientists that are really looking at it from a chemistry standpoint. Really, and again, this is happening. Even Colorado State does have, it's not a full degree, but they've got some type of certificate that you can actually go for cannabis. There's definitely, and you're going to see it in the state schools first. So let's get this research out there.
Oh yeah, terpinolene.
Terpinolene. It's a complex terpene that combines floral, citrus, and herbal notes with a slightly piney, woodsy edge. Okay, does anybody realize there's a lot of crossover here? Is anybody noticing that?
It's earthy and nutty.
And we all know it's like you smell that bag, you're like, it's earthy. That's always the go-to.
And understand,
that's what Scott always says, right? Scotty.
He's on dude. It's got a skin of white grapes.
hints of sandalwood.
The inside of a burnt barrel. That sounds lovely. I'll have that. So anyway, slightly piney, woodsy edge. This terpene has a mildly sedative effect and often found in strains with a balanced high, promoting relaxation without causing sleepiness. Other sources would be lilacs, apples, and nutmeg. And also understand that even cannabinoids too, by the way, not just terpenes, not just flavonoids, but cannabinoids are actually in the rest of the food world as well, which all these, maybe not all, but a lot of these plants that we're naming as well are also going to have different levels of cannabinoids.
A lot of crossover.
And keep this in mind, chocolate actually has THC in it. So whether you've even consumed or never consumed cannabis in your entire life, you actually probably have, because I bet you've consumed chocolate. And why do you think one of those sedative and relaxing and that type of effect you get out of chocolate? In part because of THC.
Well, and look, folks, we have cannabinoid receptors in our body for a reason.
And these things don't just pop up in the last couple 100 years.
No, this is evolution.
So ocimene, go for it.
So ocimene is sweet and herbaceous with a slightly citrusy and minty profile, known for its uplifting effects. Ocimene is often linked to creativity and socializing. Ooh. It also has antifungal and anti-inflammatory properties. Other sources would be mint, parsley, and orchids.
Oh, gotta love orchids. Largest plant family in the world, Orchidaceae. Anyhow, this one's fun. Eucalyptol, which I'm throwing it out there. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe eucalyptus. We'll see what happens. Minty and cooling, similar to, you guessed it, eucalyptus. It may contribute to alertness and mental clarity. Eucalyptol, that's funny. Eucalyptol also has anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving effects, common to some of these other ones. So it's usually found in cannabis only in trace amounts. So this is one that you don't see a whole lot of. Obviously, another source would be eucalyptus, rosemary. That makes a lot of sense too, and then the tea tree. So.
One thing I did want to put in here, I did think it was kind of interesting. I did put in a lot of the boiling points. The reason I put in these boiling points is because a lot of us ingest extracts. And when we ingest extracts, one of the things that I really try to pound into people's heads is the temperature that you are ingesting these at. So at the lowest temperature boiling point, we have osamine at 122 degrees. A lot of these go in between 122 and let's say 350. So these boiling points are actually a lot lower than what we really know, or that we really thought. A lot of times when I am dabbing, I'm doing it at like 420. One thing, I had this discussion with our friend Kai and Bill about it, and there's actually, these boiling points actually, there's called a boiling. It's called collusion basically. So what ends up happening is, so if you have two things, one's like a boiling point of 280 and the other one's a boiling point of 320, when the one that's 280 actually starts to boil,
it's going to grab the other one.
It'll grab the other one and pull it in.
Keep in mind, hydrocarbons like hydrocarbons.
Yep.
And so that's the reason that butane or some of these other tanes actually will grab these hydrocarbons, these terpenes, and pull it along with it. So keep that in mind. So to me, that actually makes total sense.
Yeah, no, it was.
And keep in mind, we don't even need to get to the boiling point. So osamine is 122 because these can start off gassing.
Yes.
What this is going to show you is a relativity of this one just has a higher one, this has a lower one. But again, they are going to start off gassing at a much lower point than that. This is boiling point, but I think that's a great chart.
When you get that, you get a lot of folks, when you get that harshness,
right?
That is that terpene basically flashing, volatilizing very quickly. And that's where you get the burnt. That's where you get the burnt throat.
Have you guys ever heard of pine salt? Right. It's so terpy that you can feel it burning in your throat.
It's got that.
You know what I mean? And that's guys, a terpene is a solvent.
Yeah.
It's a hydrocarbon. So if you put it at a high enough concentration, guys, it's a cleaner.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I also don't like this over manipulation of, putting terpenes back in different levels. Cause I have had stuff where it's just straight road flares.
And one of the things everybody who watches the show and knows me at this point knows that I am a fan of the BHO, but one of the best things about that process is everything is done at such a low temperature, super critical temperatures. You're talking, minus 80 in some cases, minus 40. So all that is for terpene preservation.
Absolutely. It's all about preservation. And keep in mind these temperatures, the harvesting temperature, the smoking temperature, all these things are going to influence flavor, aroma, and even the therapeutic effects, because it's going to basically.
That's a great point.
What's
bro.
there? What's
That's
left?
a great point.
Right?
Yeah.
Speaking of that,
if you volatilize it too hot, it's not going to give you the effect that you were anticipating. That's a great point, Jaron.
And so, thank you. Let's roll that right into the entourage effect, right? So the entourage effect really is, it's how do all of these things interact?
Right.
How do terpenes and
flavonoids? Right now it's a theory because we haven't done enough studying.
That's absolutely
because of the scheduling.
But we have a lot of anecdata.
Yep.
Graham Beasy. We have a lot of anecdata knowing that these things, that if I take it, I used to use the Marinol, right? Just straight THC Marinol pill, right? That was cracky, man. Like that was
I think I've taken one once and I was like, not for
cool.
me.
Not for me.
I hate to say it, it's like smoking distillate.
He said it, not me, but just straight THCA like that. It isn't the entourage.
It's not the right thing.
So how does terpenes and flavonoids specifically interact with cannabinoids? So the entourage effect refers to the theory, and again, as Gabe said, a theory that terpenes and cannabinoids such as THC and CBD CBG, CBN, CB, all of them work together synergistically. For example, myrcene enhances THC's sedative effect, promoting relaxation, right? So these things, there's always a constant interaction. I liken it a bit to like plant hormones in that, okay, like an auxin, depending on where it's at in the plant, it can produce roots, it can produce shoots, it can actually reduce shoot production if it's used, coming out of the apical meristem. It can also, if it's used at a high enough concentration, i.e. 2,4-D, it's a weed killer, right? So it's not just auxin, it's auxins in the ratio with cytokinins and gibberellic acids and all these things. All these things are ratios. All these things.
I should know this, but harpin proteins, are they in that realm of the auxins?
I don't believe so. I think harpin proteins, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong out there, but as far as I know, harpin proteins is something that people have just found that they can artificially initiate the systemic acquired resistance response with. What it actually does in a plant. And again, we don't know everything here, folks. And again, the best part about these shows and doing this is we open up more questions than we answer.
I love it. But it just makes me go deeper.
But anyway, so again, kind of going back to this, picking and choosing for the effect, and relating it less to genetics and more to terpenes. If you have the ability to actually test, said genetics, so you can kind of find what's working best for your body. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about choosing terpenes for desired effects, right?
So look, when selecting a cannabis strain, understanding the terpene profile can guide you towards a specific experience, and really that's what we're kind of looking for nowadays. Understanding as a consumer that while this is a general outline of effect, a person's individual endocannabinoid system will determine the overall effect and intensity. So again, I encourage you to take notes on how certain things made you feel. If there's a certain strain that you really liked, go back to the dispensary and go, hey, can I see the COA on that? And that's what COA, for anybody who's not familiar, is a certificate of analysis. Anytime you buy anything in the dispensary, they have that certificate of analysis. So they're going to give you, it'll have the cannabinoids, the terpenes, and you'll have all that stuff. If you're looking for relaxation, you're going to be looking for myrcene, linalool, and the carafline, beta carafline.
And I do like this, and sorry to cut you off. This is, we're always trying to get to the practical point.
Yep.
This to me is, of all the things we've talked about now, this is the
we gave you all the information,
but this is the real practical
is the nuts
stuff.
and bolts.
This is the nuts and bolts.
For energy and focus, you're going to look at limonene, pinene, terpinolene. For pain relief, again, carafline and humulene. And for an uplifting mood, you're going to be looking for limonene and ocimene. And as we said, that kind of, you're not going to see that volatilizes pretty low. So,
you're almost never even going to see that unless you really do have,
and go get an edible.
Well,
that has someone cranked it in there. Let's talk about flavonoids.
Oh, flavonoids.
Dude, this is the really discussed topic for a lot of people. But again, these are all compounds that are very, very important, and they all work together. Jayhawk, tell us about flavonoids.
First off, I just like the name flavonoid.
Oh, it's a great name.
It's a great name. I'm just going to throw it out there, So anyway.
Makes you sound cool.
Flavonoids in cannabis, though much less discussed than cannabinoids like THC and CBD, are crucial for the plant's therapeutic effects, flavor, and aroma, much like terpenes. They are found in many other plants, just like terpenes, including cannabis. Flavonoids are a diverse group of compounds responsible for pigmentation and providing antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer benefits. So when we talk about some of the colors and some of the stuff, that's where also the flavonoids do come in as well. And some of the,
you mean it's not from the temperature?
You mean it's from the genetics?
I got to show you that video.
It's not just about flavor. That was one of the things that surprised me about this episode reading through it. I was like, I would have thought flavonoids, right? That's just about flavor. No, color, effect, pigments, all sorts of stuff.
Well, and that's the thing. These pigments are there throughout the whole plant's lifetime. It's just when other pigments die, i.e. chlorophyll dies out because it's so dominant in that green form, then you start seeing purples, reds, et cetera, like that. And that's why we like initiating that senescence response from our good friend, the Gateway Jug Winter Frost, to really get those flavors to come through, right?
Yeah, we're pushing flavors. All right, let's talk about the role of these flavonoids in cannabis. So in cannabis, flavonoids contribute to its unique characteristics and medicinal properties. Some of the notable flavonoids found in cannabis include canflavins, A, B, and C. These are unique to cannabis and are shown to have strong anti-inflammatory effects and even more potent than aspirin. That was kind of a shocker right there. Then we have quercetin, Common in various fruits and vegetables, quercetin is an antioxidant with antiviral and anti-cancer potential. I would hope that with research coming through, hopefully in the next couple of years, that we will really start researching that, because I think that is going to be a game changer for cancer and stuff like that. And then we have apigenin and luteolin. Both are linked to anti-anxiety and sedative effects. So again, a lot of this is going to be combinations of certain cannabinoids, certain terpenes, and certain flavonoids to really kind of get a fully desired effect.
Yeah. I mean, and in general, flavonoids and terpenes interact synergistically, just like we said, and they are interacting like that to enhance that entourage effect that we've been talking about, where compounds and cannabis work together to modulate the
a lot of big words.
The plant's overall impact. Here's specifically how this interaction works. Number one, the enhanced therapeutic effects, right? Together, flavonoids and terpenes can amplify the effects working together, like anti-inflammation, pain relief, and relaxation. For example, flavonoids like quercetin work with terpenes like myrcene, known for its sedative qualities, to improve relaxation and pain relief. So obviously, those two in particular are synergistic. Aromatics and flavor. Number two, flavonoids contribute to the aroma and taste, which complements terpenes, enhancing the sensory experience of cannabis. For instance, myrcene has a musky, earthy scent, which can be deepened and softened by certain flavonoids. So that's what's wild about flavonoids. Yeah. They're more mysterious as well. These things, like Rambo said, it's like, what? I didn't expect that. Yeah. You know, that's some mysterious stuff.
You expected it really just to be kind of like an overall taste thing in the plant, but there's so much more that's involved with it.
It's like, but how can it be tied to, anti-inflammatory? How can it be tied to pigment? How can it be tied to all these things? Guys, it's a complex world. It's a plant world. We know very little about it. We say this all the time.
Can I show you from my visual perspective, just being a graphic designer? I always think of this. I always go back to the color wheel. It's like any place on here, you could pick out lots of different colors in it, but any place, it's like, it's hard to define what's really happening.
Right. I like that.
Yeah. The myrcene, the terpenoline, you combine them, they create all these shades, and it's very, very hard to pick out one of those shades. Just kind of like, hey, bud tender, what do I want? It's like,
again,
tapestry. And the thing, and I think one of the things that's really unique about it is, regardless of whether you buy, let's say, acetaminophen from, the main manufacturer or one of the off brands, it's all going to be the same. Sure. Whereas you get runts from 5 different people, and there's going to be different cannabinoid, different terpene, just depending, going back to our whole phenotype.
And now we're at phenotype, right? Yeah. Which is, now we're at phenotype, right? All these things, this is all circular, right? This is all in a system that's all attached together.
That's why standardization is so hard.
It's not,
because, your building does different than my building, that does different than his building.
Dude, I've seen buildings right next to each other built the same way that they operate differently. It's just like,
and that's why
the sun hits this one just a little bit earlier in the day and warms up the wall just a little bit.
Yep. And I don't hate to say it, but that's why we continuously go back to the new millennium. That's why.
No, not Nancy.
Nancy's down.
Nancy's down. Not Nancy.
Nancy. It's okay. Nancy's okay. That's why we go back to the new millennium, because we tell people these are the terpene enhancers. We're going to talk about it a little bit more at the end of the episode. I'm not trying to spoil her, but it is one of those things where we're like, look, man, 17 essential elements. We covered that in the first episodes. That's why the latest episodes we've been doing are about enhancing the terpenes and ways to do that are outside the 17 essential elements.
Well, and that's it's really the biostimulants and some of the other things we do. The things that I say, the plant beneficial stuff is number one, what we really focus on here, but also what I find a lot more interesting.
Yeah. Let's talk about modulation and bioavailability,
because I think that's honestly one of the most interesting things about flavonoids. Yeah.
So some flavonoids may improve how effectively cannabinoids and terpenes are absorbed and used by the body, essentially enhancing bioavailability. This can make lower doses more effective and reduce side effects. I'll be honest with you, it's almost like the Fulvic of, it really makes things work better, more effectively, more efficiently.
Or the enzyme. You could even say, the enzyme of it, but whatever. So what is the research that's going on, and what are the potential benefits? Because again, this is something that has been lacking. A lot of this is anecdata. Not that we've talked about as far as, this, but like what we know about these things. It's pretty much anecdata, whatever you want to say. Anyway, research, surprise, surprise, is still ongoing. But flavonoids show promise in contributing to cannabis's therapeutic potential, especially when paired with terpenes and cannabinoids. Understanding these interactions could lead to developing more targeted cannabis strains for specific therapeutic needs. Because of the federal classification of cannabis, research is and will be stifled till rescheduling. However, and without naming names, there has been talk about not rescheduling, but descheduling.
Yeah, which is the big one. That's the big one.
Is truly what we need. We'll leave it at that. Can you move that up a little bit, Grandpa?
So let's talk about getting more.
How do we get those terpenes
out of your plants and some of the products that we offer? Because honestly, these are the biggest things we push. We have bases. We tell people we have bases, but reality is we really push the additives because not only do we know they push terpenes and flavonoids and cannabinoids, but we know that they are unique to us. I'm not saying someone else doesn't sell fulvic acid. I'm not saying a lot of people don't sell fulvic acid, but they don't sell our fulvic acid. I actually had a discussion with one of my old cultivations today in which they had dropped some of those things. And they definitely said that in strains that were very consistent before, they had seen a loss in cannabinoids. They had seen a loss in terpenes.
Go figure.
Your loss, but understand, for the pennies on the dollar that you are paying for these additives, they really do make a difference. So the big ones for us are going to be the Ruby Fulvic. Obviously, enhances terpenes, makes Ellen's more available.
I like to say conditions the rhizosphere to maximize uptake.
Big time,
right?
Big time.
And that's just, in a nutshell, what's different about us? It's multi-source. Everything else is single source. We're multi-source, and we throw a bacteria on top of that.
Yeah,
just to give it all a little bit of a
source
zing.
fulvic. Most fulvics you're going to see are single source. Like we tell people,
single source and chemical
one
extracted.
place. So, tell them about the carbo, because honestly, I love your pitch on the carbo.
So the beauty about carbo is it's 20 different direct plant extracted sugars. And the best part about that is they're already pre-digested. So they're already
it's done in that Bokashi method.
Exactly. So they're all in that very small sugar chains. They're readily obtainable, as plant and microbe food. You will see with this, you can definitely use in your teas, things like that. You can't even fuller feed with it again because it's such small chains of sugar. You will see biofilms with it. Why? Because the bacteria love it so much. And as we learned in the bacteria episode, biofilms, when there's a lot of bacteria, they like to hang out together.
Use it as a molasses. They like to use it as a molasses substitute too.
Exactly. So what it's going to be, it's just going to be much more available molasses. Molasses plant has to put a lot of energy,
a lot of work into breaking down molasses.
So this is just all ready to go. We've done all the work for you. Anything that's out there that you're using a carbo for any reason, from any other company, whatever, you can easily insert this right there. And again, just like kind of with the fulvic, rather than having one, we have 9 different sources. Rather than having a couple different sugars, we have 20 different sugars.
The ones that Neil has in there, you don't find anywhere.
Honestly, and I don't have.
Go read the bottle. It's the weirdest name.
And we don't have all 20 listed on there. We only have 7, but it's 7 that I promise you've never heard of. Then of course there's the Winter Frost that long ago I dubbed the Gateway Jug. It still plays true today, even though a lot more people have come to me and say, "Well, this has been my Gateway Jug," or "This has been my Gateway Jug."
100%.
Any of them can be, but this is the original Gateway Jug. Standalone, pre-flush, more oil, more color, more individualization of your strains. Initiate senescence, which is a natural ripening process going to happen in any annual plant. We just get to say when and why.
Often imitated, never equal.
Never equal, never duplicated.
Finally, we actually have, surprise, surprise, the UV light from DLI. Now, the reason I really call out our UV light versus other people's is because it's not a diode, so you're not seeing that. You are seeing degradation, but it is a different degradation that in a diode, you're not replacing that.
And it's a gas-powered bulb.
We have a bulb you can replace. And then second off, it's giving you that UVA, B, and C. Most of these diodes that you're seeing in these units are UVA and B. The C also has, effects that are beneficial to the plant. Reality is UV light, just like us, a plant is going to need sunscreen and is going to create its own, in which it is going to emphasize those oils because the oil is the sunscreen.
Well, and it is. The oil is the sunscreen. And what we do is we promote positive stresses to push out oil. Why do we want to do that? Because oil is what is of horticultural significance in this plant.
It's what we want. We just did a whole episode on it.
I didn't. By the way, because where is all the terpenes, flavonoids, and cannabinoids?
The oils.
The oil. So here's the deal. The reality is if we don't talk about oil and cannabis, it's like talking about strawberries, but just about the plant, not talking about the strawberries.
We always tell people we're oil farmers, man.
Damn straight.
I'm an oil farmer. I love I love the plant, but I'm an oil farmer.
Hey,
That's
right
it.
now, if you guys are interested, I had to bring it up for only the next week and a half, 2 weeks. Everything is 30% off. So get your winter frost right now. You could get a light. You could get anything. It's all 30% off. But
Dude, 30% off on the light is pretty dope.
It's no joke.
Pretty dope.
Yeah, that's only for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So get on it.
So let's get some final thoughts in this episode. The truth of the matter is terpenes and flavonoids play a crucial role in the cannabis experience, influencing both flavor and effect of the strain, including flavonoids as well. By understanding how these compounds interact with cannabinoids and each other, users can make more informed choices to suit their personal needs. Whether looking for relaxation, creativity, pain relief, the terpene profile along with flavonoids is a valuable tool in identifying the ideal cannabis strain for your desired outcome. That's the biggest thing we want you to take away from this episode. By all means, keep it on your phone when you go in the store. Go look and remember these things, because it's not, that's why we did this episode. You can come back and go, oh, this did this and this did this, and for us, as we always say, we are oil farmers. It is the most horticulturally significant part of the plant. And so we want you to grow more oily plants.
That's right. That's right. Thank you guys for tuning in again. We really appreciate it. We always have a lot of fun doing these. We will catch you here very soon back in the Jug Den. Go check out the website. Go get the Black Friday deals. Take advantage of that while you can.
Go enhance your terps, baby.
Get the terp pack. All right, guys. Thank you very much. See you next time.